Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. We appreciate your time. I want to welcome everybody today to the enCore Energy and Azarga presentation. Recent news announced a proposed business combination, and we're very fortunate today to have Blake Steele, President and CEO of Azarga Energy, Paul Goranson, CEO and Director of enCore Energy, and William Sheriff, not Janet Sheriff, as the Executive Chair of enCore Energy. The three panelists will be going through a presentation today with Bill starting, followed by Blake, and then Paul will wrap up. Everybody has the ability to ask questions. They're all in written format, so please do write in your questions. At the end of the presentation, we will take questions from the floor. This is being recorded, and a copy will be provided to you after the presentation. So with that, welcome, and Bill, please go ahead and start the presentation.
Hello, and thank you for attending. I want to talk to you about what we think is well, the next step in building the U.S.'s preeminent ISR uranium company. Very excited time for us. Very happy to have Blake Steele, the CEO of Azarga, joining us, along with Paul Goranson, CEO of enCore. I'll run you through the first part of the presentation in theory here. And maybe not. Can't advance this. There we go. The usual disclaimer says we will be making some forward-looking statements, so I advise you of that. What we want to talk to you about, just a little bit of background. Many of you I know have heard us, Paul or I, speak of our goals and ambitions at enCore, bringing together the elite teams from, of course, Paul and his group that have brought into production a number of ISR operations throughout the U.S. Most notably, perhaps, was the Mustania project, which was brought in during the beginning of the last uranium boom in the 05 to 07, 08 timeframe, where you actually set the uranium price as being one of the few participants in the spot market on the sale side, marking spot prices well in excess of $100 a pound. During his time as with a number of different companies in the U.S. primarily, but also some internationally with Rio Algam and Cameco. He's looked at virtually every ISR, built or designed virtually every ISR plant in the U.S. and certainly familiar with many of those worldwide, including some of those in Kazakhstan. So that puts a great position to lead the charge. Blake's done an incredibly good job of putting together some outstanding properties, including the Dewey Burdock project in South Dakota and the Gas Hills project in Wyoming, along with several others. Then my side of the team, if you will, that brings in the Energy Metals Group, along with the strategy for developing this company into what we see as being the dominant player in the U.S. for this cycle. And that was really brought about through, going back to ancient history here, through 5 mergers in 30 months. And that saw us grow to what at the time was the largest resource base in the history of the U.S. and bringing together here again a very, very good team of ISR led by Dennis Stover at the time, who was one of the inventors of the process. So all in all, a really great group. This solidifies that. We've spoken often of having a near-term production focus in Texas, where we picked up 2 of the only 11 fully licensed ISR plants in the U.S. This was through the Westwater acquisition, which closed last December, our first major transformative transaction. Since then, we've been working steady on the Azarga situation. In-house, we had the early production with Texas. We had the long-term asset in New Mexico, where we command roughly half the entire district, which was the U.S.'s largest district. But we were missing that all-important middle-range pipeline of projects, something to get us not only from, but adding on to the Texas assets and production profile through those years to get us through to New Mexico and beyond. And this package fits like a glove. the Advanced Dewey Burdocks and the Gas Hills project both just drop right into the model and provide us a complete cycle of projects or pipeline of projects. So couldn't be any happier about that. We also see this being a much larger, long-lived uranium boom, which will allow us to really take advantage of our commanding position of projects. As you can see there, we've got projects in all of the, most of the major states in the U.S. where we've got major uranium endowment, primarily Wyoming and Texas, which are two agreement states. That is that when you permit your uranium projects, be it the mines or the processing plants, there's no interaction with the federal government. You deal strictly with the one window permitting at each state, very progressive established regimes. So it's certainly not easy. You certainly don't take shortcuts, but it's a very clear-cut, definitive process for getting your licenses. And any of the other states, you generally end up dealing with the federal government, with the exception of Utah. So you can see together this builds quite an impressive company, right at 100 million pounds in the measured, indicated, and inferred, with 90% of that being measured and indicated, along with over 68 million pounds in the historical. So quite altogether close to 170 million pounds of endowment. Gives us multiple jurisdictions, multiple advanced projects, and as again, it really does complete that pipeline. And of course, we'll be working almost immediately following the vote to continue to push the South Dakota, the Dewey Burdock project through, as well as fire up initial permitting activity on Gas Hills in Wyoming, while maintaining a full court press in Texas. So certainly won't be any grass growing under our feet on this one. In terms of the transaction, enCore is going to acquire Azarga with a plan of arrangement, just the format under which it's amalgamated under British Columbia law. 0.375 or 3/8 of a share of enCore will be exchanged for each share of Azarga. There are some provisions there that should the market decline significantly to protect a lower ratio collar, but we don't envision that happening. The market seems to be quite strong, and we're certainly optimistic that we'll close considerably higher by the time of the vote and closing. Our board composition, Sandra McKay will be joining us from Azarga, and Blake Steele will be coming along with his expertise and certainly his door on Asia, where he's based, and certainly look forward to working with Blake as he helps continue to build the shareholder base and relationships that he's established there, as well as elsewhere in the world. Also, I'd like to mention John Mays will be coming on, talk a bit more about personnel later. Deal protection, we are subject to a $4 million break under certain circumstances. The company will be making a listing application to file probably on NASDAQ, but we haven't ruled out the NYSE Amex either. We are DTC eligible as of a day or two ago, and we have had preliminary discussions with both exchanges. We do meet the listing requirements in general, and we'll try and move that along hand in hand with the merger vote and closing process. Just a few words about our team. Our team remains, even with our great pipeline of projects, the team is certainly equally valuable, if not more so. The technical expertise here is hundreds and hundreds of years of dedicated work in the uranium. A number of in situ patents are held by the group here I'm going to talk to you about. Artie and Paul, our leader, incredible history, over 30 years in the business, most recently with Energy Fuels prior to joining us, and notably president of Cameco Resources for quite some time. Ironically, he started his career in Texas with uranium resources, and some of the very resources that we'll be putting into production he's quite familiar with as he helped build them initially. Dr. Dennis Stover, here again, our former CEO, is now our Chief Technical Officer. One of the founders of the in situ process. His technical advice and expertise in chemical engineering is really quite valuable for us moving forward. Blake, as I already mentioned, will be coming on board as a strategic advisor. I've been quite active in the metals business. Very happy to have him joining the team. He'll be a very, very important part of that moving forward. Formerly with South Gobi Enterprise, what part of the Ivanhoe Group. So here again, based in Hong Kong, he's certainly got access to and opens the door for us to an entirely different segment of the investor public, and we think it'll be quite helpful going forward. Richard Cherry has been involved with Cotter Corp, Nuclear Fuels Corp, 40 years of experience in operations as well as in contracting. Mark Paliza, 40 years in ISR operations as well as permitting, most of that at Uranium Resources. I'm not going to read all of these 2 pages, but I will mention these because they're really key people moving forward. Bill Harris was our audit committee chairman when we went to the New York Stock Exchange under Energy Metals Corp, meeting the Sarbanes-Oxley requirements, and he will continue to be our audit chair. And Nate Tewalt rounds out the group. And then you can see Sandra McKay coming in with 25 years of legal experience, having served in a number of positions, including lead counsel for Canada Chevron, a huge company, as well as a number of stints in the uranium business, primarily, most notably with Uranium Energy, or Uranerts Energy, sorry, before coming on board with Azarga. So what does the combined company look like? Obviously, we have different listings, TSX.V, OTCQB, TSX main board, and then the OTCQB. The liquidity you can see here, research coverage. So you can see there's not a lot of duplication here. So we're going to be able to grow our exposure across all these markets and through all these exchanges, and in addition to picking up much broader research coverage going forward. You can see the market capitalization is a day or so old, but roughly 370 million on our side, 170 on theirs. So you're looking at a $500 million company here when we combine these two. That's a good start in terms of recognition of our full project pipeline, which helps us grow to that goal of 5 million pounds a year production through ISR means. Here again, you can see the attributable resources. I'd already gone over enCore's side of it before. And now you can see how that's going to be added to with the roughly 50 million pounds that are coming from Azarga. Current physical uranium inventory, this is a little bit dated. It's 100,000 pounds. We did sell 100,000 pounds very near the top within the last couple of days, just to take advantage of the market and provide additional liquidity. I'm sure you're all familiar with a number of the headlines that have been dotting the papers or the media over the last 6 to 12 months. We have broad-based bipartisan political support in the U.S. for nuclear energy. First time we've had that in many, many years. It's a key and essential factor in the green energy movement. And you just can't get there without nuclear. You just don't know way you can have enough windmills and solar panels to meet your carbon emission deadlines without nuclear. So it's going to have to be. You're seeing some of the licensed plants have their licenses extended. You're seeing new plants licensed. You're seeing a couple of them being built in the U.S., but you're seeing an awful lot of them around the world. And you're seeing increased fuel loadings on licensed plants, increasing their energy output, which requires more uranium. All these things compound to really show us the decade ahead of us looks incredibly bright. We're just in the early innings of this uranium renaissance. So it's an incredibly great time to be building a company. With that, I'll turn it over to Paul Goranson for a review of not only some of the assets, but also of the uranium market as we see it. Paul?
Thanks, Bill. Thank you. I'll kick it off with talking about what we're seeing in the uranium industry itself, nuclear industry. We're seeing continued growth with 154 reactors being built around the world, even 2 of those in the United States. A strong drive to small modular reactors. And kind of an interesting fact is that since Fukushima back in 2011, the nuclear incident of Fukushima, we've seen even more nuclear power plants coming online and being under construction prior to 2011. So it's a dramatic change, and that's principally because of the high density energy generation that nuclear provides. And so we see that as the long-term growth story with respect to uranium demand, both domestically in the United States as well as globally. That's going to draw create the supply-demand model that's going to drive a growth and support our growth as a company. And also, most recently, we've seen significant activity within the uranium sector, particularly for U3O8 content. And that's due to quite a bit of financial players being involved, as well as some uranium producers. Even enCore participated in that, buying uranium as a hedge or as a means to an investment, but also potentially for a mitigation for supply interruptions down the road. And as Bill mentioned, we did sell some uranium because of the value that we're at right now. Provides a way to provide liquidity for us without the need for doing any kind of significant financing, et cetera, as we go through this transaction and move towards that listing on a U.S. listing. One of the things that we have going for us is that we announced early in August that we signed a contract to sell uranium to a uranium trader, UG USA. That gives us a good start, starting in 2023, to support our early production, but also helps us support the company going forward as we bring these other projects on, both in South Dakota, Texas, and Wyoming going forward. So this is, as Bill basically described, this is our assets. One of the key things is we can do things now because we have 2 licensed ISR facilities in Texas. And with South Dakota, we bring on that next level, that pipeline projects to support the Texas production, bring in more production behind that. And Wyoming brings with the gas hills project, even layers on top of that. So we have a large, resource base that can build in production in a relatively near term. And New Mexico remains our long-term assets. Focusing on Texas, we have the 2 production facilities, Rosita and Kingsville Dome. Those have been around. I'll get into a little bit more detail on those. We have the Butler Ranch Exploration Project, which is we acquired through the Westwater transaction. More interesting is now we have the Upper Spring Creek Development Project, which combines several properties into a production that's going to feed Rosita. And the good thing about what we see exciting about Texas is that there's a large amount of resources that we know about ahead of us that we're going to be able to fill a long-term production pipeline that's going to support the company as well. That's going to be starting, hopefully, our expectation is as early as 2023. Texas provides an agreement state process that allows us to move fast. We have one-stop shopping effectively in Austin. Allows us to leverage Kingsville and Rosita central processing plants. Currently, they have a capacity of 1.6 million pounds a year, but those are scalable, and we can easily and for a relatively low cost double or more, or even more than double that capacity. Currently, we're focusing right now on upgrading the Rosita central processing plant, basically completing the refurbishment work that was started in 2008 and upgrading it to current best practices. And Kingsville Dome, we're going to was refurbished in 2005. It's currently on standby. We'll be maintaining that facility as a production option as we see our production pipeline grow and that capacity is needed. Both are designed to handle remote ion exchange operations. One of the things that we did acquire with the Westwater transaction are the satellite ion exchange plants that bring us significant capacity capability. So when we bring in new facility operations, we'll be able to have excess capacity and increase our production. And we have a significant acquisition pipeline in South Texas that's going to keep feeding and provide us to the ability to meet our capacity that we have now, and also allow us to grow that capacity in South Texas. Next. Turn it over to Blake now to talk about the Azarga side of the equation.
Thanks, Paul. Much appreciated. As Paul and Bill have noted, Azarga's asset suite is a perfect complement to that of enCore's. The Dewey Burdock and Gas Hills project provide enCore with 2 additional Tier 1 development stage assets in the United States. The Dewey Burdock project is an advanced stage, high-grade ISR uranium project located in South Dakota, USA, and possesses a very unique combination of grade and scale. Grades at the Dewey Burdock project are up to 2.5 to 3 times higher than those of other comparably sized ISR uranium projects that have been developed in nearby Wyoming. On the permitting front, substantial progress has been made moving Dewey Burdock towards construction in recent years, with key federal permits being issued for the project. Additionally, the state permits have already been recommended for approval pending completion of hearings that were previously put on hold until the key federal permits were issued. The focus is now on finalizing that state permitting process as quickly as absolutely possible. Next slide, please, Paul. Thank you. The Dewey Burdock project also has very competitive economics. Forecast cash operating costs total $10.46, and only $31.7 million of initial capex is required to achieve production. However, to me, the key takeaway is even at $40 uranium prices, the project has a pre-tax IRR of 28%. Not many development stage uranium assets globally have this IRR at current spot prices. One other thing that I think is important to touch on as well is historic reports also indicate that significant resource upside exists, not only at Dewey Burdock, but also at Dewey Terrace. Now, Dewey Terrace is located directly adjacent to Dewey Burdock on the Wyoming side of the border, and significant uranium mineralization has actually already been identified there. Now, switching gears to Gas Hills here. Next slide, sorry, Paul, thank you. The Gas Hills region is a prolific uranium district in Wyoming with approximately 100 million pounds of past production. Similar to Dewey Burdock, infrastructure to support future mine development is readily available. In 2021, significant advancements were made at the Gas Hills project, including an increased resource estimate, followed by a maiden PEA focused on the ISR amenable resources. The PEA demonstrated robust project economics and expands the future production profile of the combined company into the state of Wyoming, which has a long history of successful ISR operations. Moreover, Cameco owns a fully permitted ISR uranium project directly adjacent to our Gas Hills project. And again, going back to the current spot price, even at $40 a pound uranium, the project has a pre-tax IRR of 63%. So pretty phenomenal economics, all things considered, And though the PEA, apologies, next slide as well, thank you. Though the PEA envisioned treating the Gas Hills project as a satellite to Dewey Burdock, it's important to note that there is also the opportunity to move Gas Hills forward as a standalone project, providing the company with even more optionality. So look, in summary, both Gas Hills and Dewey Burdock are low-cost development projects that are well positioned to be put into production during this uranium cycle. And I'll pass it back to you now, Paul. Thank you.
Thanks, Blake. I'll kick it off and switch to our long-term production pipeline. That'd be New Mexico. New Mexico's got a historic resources that are significant. It was originally the largest producer of uranium in the United States and constitutes almost 100% of production at one time, feeding the nascent nuclear power infrastructure in the U.S. Within our assets we acquired through Westwater, we effectively doubled our footprint in New Mexico. We have a significant holding of over 300,000 acres of mineral rights, and several projects that are located that have significant upside, and quite a few of those are ISR targets for future development, including our Crown Point Hosta Butte deposits. Next slide. A little bit about Crown Point Hosta Butte. We have, as you can see, we have a large resource base there, both in M&I and inferred resources. This is a project we own 60% of the mineral estate, and it's currently permitted and licensed by the Nuclear Regulatory Commission. We expect that when production starts to restore, particularly in New Mexico, this will be one of the first ones to move. It is an ISR project. It is currently, the license is currently held by Laramide Resources, and we have good relations with them. We expect to be working with them to develop this project once that decision's made. It's been historically operated as a pilot plant, and so we know the amenability as well as the productivity of it, and it's a good high-grade ISR resource. Next. Marquez 1 Tafoya is probably one of the more interesting projects we have in our portfolio, not because of it's simply because it's the first time one owner has control of two separate properties that are for a single ore body. And so when enCore acquired the 1 Tafoya mine through its Westwater acquisition, we were able to put this whole project together. And as a result, we issued a PEA and technical report earlier this year that was the first time these two projects have been brought together as one. And it's exciting numbers, and although it requires a little bit higher price because this is a conventional, PEA was done as a conventional deposit, it does show it's economic. The price is only slightly higher than where spot prices are today. And also we have nearby, we have an ISR amenable deposit that needs to be further evaluated. So the 1 Tafoya, Marquez 1 Tafoya project is a long-term operation that'll be there I see as a momentum project, but we principally are focusing on ISR. But this is one that if the market conditions prevail, could be brought on and be a significant contributor to production. Next. And I'll hand it back over to Bill.
Thank you, Paul and Blake. I really appreciate the insight from both of you on these. Hopefully we presented to you a clear, compelling picture of enCore and where it's going. We've already built a pretty impressive company with, as I say, about 160 million pounds of total endowment, stretching across the prime uranium districts of the United States, and brought together an elite team. I'd put our ISR team above, compare them favorably with just about any other team in the business. I think from the very early days to modern techniques, so we've got it covered. We've got all the aspects of the fuel cycle recovered, from the marketing, conversion, enrichment to reclamation with our team. Our full PowerPoint you'll be seeing on the website in coming days will list those folks, including an important addition to our technical team, John Mays, who was Chief Operating Officer of Azarga, that will continue in that role as Chief Operating Officer of the Azarga unit within enCore. And his family's roots are very deep in ISR. His son Wallace, or his father Wallace, was one of the early pioneers, along with Dr. Stover, in developing the process. So very, very deep talent pool, even deeper now with the combination. So all in all, we're very excited. Doesn't mean we're going to take our eye off of the ball for potential acquisitions. There's still room for further consolidation in the industry. I think the industry calls out for it, and I think we certainly may not be the only participants in the consolidation, but we're certainly making a major move forward to do so. So with that, we're having a few technical difficulties here, but hopefully we'll be able to take questions.
Thanks, everybody. I have lost the question bar. I apologize. So while I'm bringing that back up, Paul, this is where you get to pick your question.
Okay.
Mine would be, what are the top 3 features about this transaction that you look forward to?
Well, I look forward to the fact that we're bringing in a couple of things. We're bringing in a good team that helped build Azarga, but also we're bringing in a good set of advanced projects that can really round out the company strategy with respect to our production objectives and become the premier operator, your ISR producer in the United States. And third, it provides us that ability to grow with the uranium industry as it begins to respond to that supply-demand curve scenario starts to play out as we see nuclear utilities looking to re-enter the market and develop some long-term relationships with uranium producers.
Thank
Blake,
you.
do you have anything you want to add?
No, I think that's quite comprehensive. Thanks, Paul.
Okay, Bill wanted to add something right now, so I'll let Bill add.
Yes, well, it's always a bit, one of the questions that always comes up is timing and timetable to production. And while it's not a simple plan of what we can do, we're certainly reliant upon others, primarily government agencies, for permitting. I think it's important to give you a flavor for that. It's also not independent of uranium market prices. We're all aware of the rather stratospheric move we've seen in the last couple of weeks, prompted to largely by our friends at Sprott that have started their physical fund. Very grateful for that. And that may very well bridge its way into the forthcoming very large unsatisfied demand by the nuclear utilities. So, the exact timing and whether or not we have some bumps along the road, very, very important. And I think you'll see that influence it. But in general, we've maintained an 18 to 24 month timeline on getting into production in Texas. Obviously, with the improved prices, we're a little more aggressive on that. That's the one that we do control our destiny on. There'll be a bit of permitting in Texas, but it's a very favorable, very predictable state. So, that one here again, you could see that production come on in early 23, most optimistic. Paul, the engineer, may have to slow things down here a little bit, but that's something you could look at. And I think we're within 6 months, one way or the other there. We've certainly discussed that enough and know the ground rules well enough there. In terms of the second project to come on, it's a bit of a horse race between Gas Hills and Dewey Burdock, but we'd expect Dewey to finish first, as Blake outlined so closely, though almost every permit's in place. Outstanding items are largely with the state. We expect to get there. That could easily come in late 24 or 25. Gas Hills would be right on the heels of that. So that gives you an idea of when we talk about short-term, mid-term, and long-term of where these assets fit in the pipeline and very rough timelines as to when you may see actual production come out of them.
Okay, thanks, Bill. Paul, do you want to talk a little bit about the strategy for New Mexico?
Sure. Well, our strategy is to begin to, in addition to basically carrying forward with the projects we have, is to begin to look at the assets that we have outside of just Crown Point, Hosta Butte, and Marquez, Tafoya, to look at beginning to assess their resources and build a production timeline, or at least a timeline for project development. And at that point, we'll begin to look at both from a drilling perspective to go out and look at to firm up resources we currently book as historic resources, but also start initial work on evaluating permitting and licensing, as well as working with local communities to particularly as most of these operations or projects are located close to tribal communities that have had some negative history with uranium mining in the past, to be able to build relationships, but also to find ways that they can also participate in this development of this uranium resources endowment that rests in New Mexico. And And there are models for that. There's current, what we've seen up in Saskatchewan with what Cameco's done up in with the First Nations there, and models else even in the United States where tribal companies have begun to have been in the mining business as well. So we're looking for potential opportunities there where we can bring some ownership into as we advance these projects, because that's what those communities lacked in the last run-up. And so they have, there's a long memory of how the communities were impacted by the mining practices in the past. But we expect to move forward on that. And some of our properties are actually located well away from these communities, such as Marquez, Montefoya, and others that are located on Spanish land grant lands, et cetera, that we can also look at advancing as market conditions prevail. So we've got a lot of opportunities, a long-term view with respect to New Mexico. We don't expect things to happen as fast as they do in Texas and Wyoming and South Dakota, but we do expect that we'll see some progress in New Mexico going forward.
Okay, we have one question that sort of partially answered, but I'll read it and you can add to it between Blake and yourself. What mine is closest to get into production? What magnitude of production? And what time frames are you aiming for? Additional question is, what long-term contracts have you signed? Any details you can share?
So I'll address the first one, the last one first, second one, because that's easy. That's going to be the shortest answer. We have one contract we've signed with UG USA. It starts in 2023. It's a 5-year agreement. It is market related, so in other words, it's tied directly to spot price. And we felt that was a good structure for that contract, because if we believe the supply demand scenario, where the market's going to go at that timing of 2023, we expect the spot market to be responding at that point. So we'll be where we would expect to be if we had a fixed price contract with the utility. We also see it strengthening our ability to negotiate for long-term agreements with utilities that with hopefully with better terms. That's our expectation. Now, switching back to the first question, we are looking to South Texas as being our most immediate short-term project. So we have 2 areas we're working on. We're going to be increasing our resources right approximate to Rosita. There's some areas that are already permitted that weren't fully developed by the previous operator that we're going to look to expand to. That's our shortest term likelihood, but also we have what's called our Upper Spring Creek project, which we've acquired. We actually acquired in fee the key property for that with significant uranium resources on it. At this point, we don't have any published resource numbers that we're ready to announce, but we believe that it was all previously developed. And it was never actually put in operation. It was licensed and permitted. All the licensing documents are already in place. We're already working with the state of Texas to begin advancing, and it'll be amended under Rosita's license. So it's not a whole new license we're actually going out to. We're basically expanding the Rosita license to bring in these other properties. And so we see that as being expedited. So we do expect to have production capacity ready to go in 2023 to deliver into our contract. And then it's sky's the limit at that point, in my opinion.
Perfect. Thank you, Paul. I have a question for Blake has come in. Am I right to remember that the Dewey PEA capital expenditures include plans for a mill? Would that still be the plan going forward?
Thanks, Janet. Yeah, so over the first 3 years of ramp up, the Dewey Burdock PEA envisions toll milling, and the proceeds from the sale of uranium products would generate sufficient cash flows to build out the plant in year 4 when you're fully ramped up to 1 million pounds per year. Now, look, there's obviously one of the one of the important things behind this transaction is creating scale, which is absolutely critical in the natural resource sector. And this company and this transaction will position the new company among the top uranium miners in the USA. So, you know, to raise an extra $15 million of capital to ultimately build out that production facility in year one is certainly an option. And ultimately that's going to be based on the strategy and that Bill and Paul deploy. But that's what's currently envisioned under the PEA at present.
Excellent. Thank you very much. There's a question that I'm going to ask Bill to answer. Somebody is asking if we could shed more light on the joint venture with Laramide.
Yeah, I'll be glad to answer that. We do not have a formal agreement with Laramide. We've worked closely with Laramide for a number of years, as obviously it's a bit of a unique situation where they maintain the federal NRC license on a very large property, which includes a substantial portion of our property and theirs in the Crown Point Church Rock area. In fact, we actually share the permitting services of Mark Paliza, one of our directors, so that in order to keep those licenses live and active. So there's a close working relationship, but there's been no formal joint venture activity. We would not look to establish that over the course of the next year or two, as Paul clearly pointed out, and I think we've all stated a number of times, the New Mexico assets, while they're great and very high quality resources, there's considerable amount of community work and you know, that sort of effort to be made before we actually look to develop there. So I'm sure you'll see something along the joint venture lines or some more formal agreement to consolidate the proper properties with the proper licenses, but it's certainly not anything on the immediate radar screen. We can still work towards establishing ourselves in the right place to be in New Mexico at the right time, and we'll be working on that and take care of the Laramide issue in due course.
Thanks, Bill. A very nice question that started off with congratulations to the Azarga and the enCore team for the business combination. The person writing it was very complimentary and asked if we see other options for consolidation in the industry.
I'll take that again, not to monopolize the questions, but spoke on that briefly. We see an awful lot of opportunities here and still a compelling need for consolidation within the industry. You know, we not only see that ourselves, we hear that from our institutional clients, especially the ones that are, you know, more directly involved and have been with the uranium industry. Obviously, with a domestic focus, there are obviously fewer players involved as we move down that. You know, whether we'll be the acquirer or the acquiree will remain to be seen, but obviously we've got an appetite for it, having entered into this, our second transaction in less than 12 months, and certainly a pedigree of quite a bit of activity in the M&A field. So we're constantly evaluating those activities, and yes, we see further not only opportunities for consolidation, but we see consolidation really across the industry, not just in ISR in the US, but that's the part that we'll be most active in.
Thanks, Bill. Paul, this one's probably for you. Any idea as to the timing for the US listing?
We're going to be looking at doing the U.S. listing immediately after we can complete the merger transaction, and all, you know, we've already started currently working on the U.S. listing and getting prepped for that. So that's an action that's going on simultaneously, and then once the merger is complete, our expectation is that immediately after that we'll apply for that listing, but we're already working on the preliminary work that you have to do prior to that application.
Okay, thank you, Paul. I have a question probably best for Blake and perhaps Paul together. Azarga had talked about bringing in a partner to sign an offtake agreement to fund the development of the two projects. Do you think the combined company will be able to fund development by itself?
Paul, do you want to go ahead with that one, or do you want me to start there?
Why don't you kick it off, Blake, and then I'll wrap it up.
Yeah, no, look, I mean, I think just taking one step back as well, I think the one thing that excites me about this transaction, and look, ultimately I will be a shareholder in the combined company as well, is really Bill and Paul's vision, their captivation for where they want to take this company. And you know, vision's important, but coupling that with the team and the right asset suite is equally important. So to me, you know, joining forces with a management team that has the pedigree of enCore's and the successful track record, I think is ultimately very important for us. And look, leveraging that into relationships with you know, utilities, future off-takers, whomever that may be, I think that gives us a lot more flexibility in terms of how we go about developing the projects, really to minimize the cost of capital for the overall shareholder base. So, you know, Paul, you might be able to give some more specific color on that.
Sure. Thanks, Blake. And I just would add, you know, we talk a lot about consolidation. One of the things that consolidation brings, in addition to combining assets and you know, quite often reducing corporate costs, et cetera, you know, those type of things, it also brings market strength. And by having the ability to have the ability to deliver to, say, for a utility or multiple utilities, allows us to have a stronger ability to respond to those RFPs, et cetera. But also it brings ability to bring more to the table when you're having a discussion with a nuclear utility or a fuel buyer. I see it establishes that we have the ability to be competitive on a world basis, you know, and the stronger we are, the more we can compete with our global competitors. And that's one of the things that it's hard to do as a single asset or a couple of a smaller company, is to be able to compete on that larger scale. Because the reality is that the market's entirely different than it was back in 2006 and 7, where a small player or small company could find a place pretty easily in the market. With large state-owned companies that we have right now, it makes it more competitive, and scale brings competitiveness. And I think this is what we're doing right now, bring these two companies together with these tier one, these great projects and resources, provides us ability to provide that scale and become a premier not only producer but also supplier to the nuclear fuel cycle. Not just domestically, but internationally. It gives us that strength.
Thanks, Paul. We have time for one last question, and then we'll wrap it up. We're almost at the top of the hour, and this one is for Blake. Would Jupiter be the next project after Gas Hills? Juniper, sorry.
I guess that one's ultimately for Paul and Bill, but look, Juniper Ridge is similar to the endowment and the pounds that enCore currently has in New Mexico. It's a little bit of a longer term project, and that project it'll need a more favorable pricing environment than a Dewey Burdock or a Gas Hills, for example.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much. One last question. What's your opinion on new technologies of enrichment, such as laser incitation tails, and its impact on supply as a secondary source?
Sounds like Paul's question.
Well, obviously, it's going to create an interesting dynamic within the market. The laser excitement, or you know, some of the technology out there, you know, one that we're most familiar with is Silex. Provides a really effectively a way to create another uranium mine, theoretically, to basically take uranium tails effectively from what we would see right now with conventional centrifugal centrifuges of about 0.15, and that's 0.15% U-235 content. That's the content of the fissionable product left in the uranium after it's been the enrichment has occurred. effectively to zero. The question is that how does that happen commercially, and how does that happen technically with respect to the laser enrichment? It's one of the things is that the current deployment of that technology right now is in the United States, is also a significant holder as another uranium production company. So my expectation is that it will provide a means to extract more U-235 out of a uranium atom or out of the uranium atom than current technology. But as far as its commercial deployment and the ability to do that commercially, it's going to be we're going to have to wait and see on that. But it does provide another source of competition and potentially for secondary supplies. But right now, the technologies, as far as I know, is not considered commercial. And keep in mind is that there are laws of thermodynamics we deal with that provides the more you take out, the harder it gets to. That even with technology such as the laser enrichment, does become a point where economics clash with technology. So we'll have to see how that pans out, but it is definitely a technology that could be a game changer in the enrichment sector, but it also could be bring in additional secondary supplies. It just at the moment we're so far advanced of that it's hard for me to quantify what that could be.
Thanks, Paul. I think we're going to wrap it up now. One last, I'm going to use the comments from one shareholder that wrote in to say that he wanted to extend his congratulations to both the enCore and the Azarga teams, bringing the two companies together. He sees a definite new uranium force in the U.S. With that, if anybody has any final comments, I'll ask Blake first. Any final comments?
No, look, ultimately just really excited to get the transaction closed and the combined company moving forward and executing the vision that Paul and Bill have been working on for a period of time here. So looking forward to the future.
Thank you. Paul, any comments?
Sure. I just want to say that, first of all, I want to compliment Blake and his team up to this point. I can say that Blake and I have had a lot of conversations over the last few months. And I want to compliment him and also his team for working together to get to this point. I look forward to the combined company and the future it brings. And I look forward to also working with Blake in the future, as well as with John, who I've known for a long time, and the rest of the Azarga team. I think we're going to put together a good combination of projects and capability going forward. And I look forward to what that brings.
Thank you. Bill, any final comments?
Yes, echoing the comments from Blake and Paul, but also directly to the investors. Hopefully we've presented a snapshot in a limited period of time here of why we're so excited and how we're executing on our plans that we've talked about for the last couple of years. We waited for a long time until the market was right. We jumped in rather aggressively last year with the first Westwater being transformative, getting 2 of only 11 plants, and then now having completed a good solid pipeline of projects with initial production capable, as I say, in early 23 if things work out well, and just continuing to build on that production with this solid group of assets, all ISR and all in the U.S., which is still the world's largest consumer. So hopefully we've conveyed that to you. We all remain available to speak to you on individual basis to handle any questions you may have that we didn't answer, and hope you'll share our vision for looking forward to some really exciting times over the coming decade. Thank you.
Well, thank you all to the presenters today. On your screen are the contact details for each of the companies. Please do feel free to reach out. I want to thank you again for your time. We appreciate that time is valuable, and you've dedicated a lot of time today to our presentation. The link will be sent to everybody registered, and if we didn't answer your questions during the presentation, we will have those and we will follow up after. Thank you again to the presenters, and I wish everybody a very good day. Thank you.